Welcome to Griffin's Solution Spotlight series, where we sit down with supplier partners and technical specialists to discuss common problems faced by many growers. Today, we'll be discussing some different fertilizer types and monitoring strategies. My name is Erica Hernandez. I'm a GGS Pro CEA technical specialist with Griffin. And joining me today is Laura Barbison from Master Plant Prod and Darren Gilbert from Blue Lab. I'll start us off with a brief introduction. Fertilizers come in many different forms, but it's very common to see either water-soluble or liquid forms to be used in greenhouse production. Either of these forms has its place. Water-soluble fertilizers typically come as dry salts and can be either formulated blends or straights that may have just an individual nutrient or maybe just a couple nutrients included. These fertilizers are great for mixing custom recipes or creating highly concentrated stock tanks, but oftentimes there really aren't many organic options with these water-soluble salts. Liquid fertilizers, in contrast, often come out in front with growers who are seeking organic products. Growers also get a little bit of a labor savings when they're able to direct inject these liquid fertilizers straight from the bottle, but that also comes with the fact that they have to ship extra weight with all of that water weight in there. I'll let Laura dive deeper into these differences. All right, so Laura, if you want to jump into the first question, the first thing we want to ask is what are some common reasons you hear for people switching over to water-soluble fertilizers from liquid fertilizers?
So the most common reason that first interests growers is the cost savings. This is for a number of aspects, most notably the fact that they are no longer paying for water, which reduces transportation costs most significantly. From there, they soon understand that many reasons to make the switch to a water-soluble fertilizer, especially Plant Prod MJ. So firstly, the flexibility of use. They have complete control over concentration of solutions that they're making. This allows them to use water-soluble fertilizers more efficiently and with various irrigation systems, whether that's with concentrated stock solutions or one-to-one irrigation. Next is the purity of our products. This allows them to ultimately use less fertilizer. It also means lower heavy metal levels, which is due to our consistent and thorough quality control processes and material vetting. And finally, water-soluble fertilizers are easier to test for nutrient content as well as for heavy metal content. And this lets us provide extensive information on our products to our customers.
Cool. Okay. So are there any problems that people tend to run into when they're switching over to those water-soluble fertilizers over the liquid?
The most common issue we come across is when a grower has been previously using a liquid feed with an organic element, which most of them do, and they've unknowingly developed biofilm within their irrigation system. If they're not taking the appropriate cleaning and sanitizing measures before switching to a water-soluble fertilizer, this biofilm can benefit from the concentrated nutrients and proliferate further. It can then build up on top of growing media, which can impact the penetration of nutrients and water into the media. So before switching to a water-soluble fertilizer, we recommend a thorough two-step cleaning process that includes physical cleaning to remove buildup, followed by a sanitizing product. And this would be for the entire irrigation system, tanks, lines, emitters, filters, all parts of it.
So is there any difference in how you would use liquid versus water-soluble fertilizer? It sounds like there are some general differences.
Absolutely. So growers have a far more flexibility when using water-soluble fertilizers. They have full control over concentration of solution that they make. This allows them to use products with an injector system, and it means they can mix stock solutions far less frequently. Most specifically with the Plant Prod MJ program, we provide even more flexibility thanks to our complete nutrient blends. This means that each formulation contains nitrogen, potassium, and a full complete micronutrient package. This gives growers the option to feed A/B formulations, either alternating style or simultaneously from two stock tanks. without the risk of missing essential nutrients. And deciding between these two growing techniques can be based on irrigation setup and schedule or cultivar preferences. It also reduces the amount of mixing compared to other soluble programs, which are generally based on 3 formulations and using a separate micronutrient product.
How does storage of these stock solutions or just any fertilizer solution differ between solid and liquid fertilizers?
So storage in general, aside from the solution itself, storage and transportation of water-soluble fertilizers is much easier and less expensive compared to a liquid feed. There is no need for climate control when storing or transporting water-soluble fertilizer, unlike liquid fertilizers, which have a high water content and are susceptible to freezing in colder regions. When we're talking about nutrient content by weight, you're able to store and transport a far greater amount with water-soluble fertilizer, even in a smaller space compared to liquid. And finally, there's an indefinite shelf life for water-soluble fertilizer. They do not expire. And even when they are in solution form, once they're fully dissolved, and if there's nothing else added in there that may cause incompatibilities, it will remain in solution.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Laura. That was a lot of great information. And I think we learned a lot about how liquid and solid fertilizers are different. But now let's learn a little bit about how we understand our mixtures and how do we monitor that. So let's hear from Darren at Blue Lab. How do we know we're mixing our fertilizers correctly?
That's a very good question, but that can be a challenge for a lot of growers. One, you want to make sure that they're consistently mixed. And by that, you're reading it near the top of, if you're mixing up a reservoir, it's going to be the same as it is at the lower portions. A lot of, as Laura had mentioned, you have water soluble nutrients, and you want to make sure that they get good and mixed in. You need to have a good circulating pump. But when you go to take your measurements, whether you're midline, near the top or at the bottom, you're going to get consistent EC reading.
When they're doing those EC readings and when they're checking their fertilizers, what are some tools that growers can use for those to accomplish those goals, to check everything?
Blue Lab manufactures quite a few different devices, several handhelds. I don't know if you want me to show them, but you have devices like an EC pen. It's going to be tough to pick up on this screen. But you've got small handheld devices, obviously for a smaller reservoir type setup, or even if they're taking out some of those nutrients into a measuring cup and they want to check it within that. You also have larger devices that will give them a better reach within the reservoir. This is called the truncheon nutrient meter, and it'll light up and give them their EC readings in the form of lights that light up. And then you have continuous monitors that will constantly monitor the EC, temperature, and pH within a reservoir setup. Typically, we'll see these in larger setups because they have a longer cord, lets them get deeper into the reservoirs, as well as you can also get this in an inline version for anybody that's using a pressurized system to deliver their nutrients.
All right, so I've heard you use the term EC a couple times now, Darren. What does that mean?
EC stands for electroconductivity. It's the ability of that solution to conduct electricity within that solution. As we heard earlier, they need to use either a good RO or distilled water. A lot of people still will use their well water or their tap water, and at that point, you need to have a baseline. You want to measure that first. If you're using RO and distilled water, which in essence has 0 ions in it, that's your best form to start. And then you're going to add your nutrients, which are salts based, and that's going to allow the conduction of the electricity and give you your EC reading in millisiemens per centimeter. So it's going to tell you how fast and how strong your EC or your nutrient mix is.
All right, so it sounds like EC does tell us a lot about our fertilizer concentration, but what doesn't it tell us? What do we still need to know?
You really want to know what your NPK is, basically. You're going to have, some people will have additional nutrients, but they're your three major ones that you're going to want to know. And we can't tell you what that is through reading an EC reading. It's just going to give you the strength of those combined nutrients within that solution. So you don't want to get too strong, because then you get into what's called a hot mix, and you can potentially get burn on roots, especially on new, younger plants. But it can happen in older as well, or it can be too weak of a solution and you're not supplying those plants with enough nutrients within that mix. It's easier to adjust up than it is trying to dilute and bring it back down. So you want to start slow, mix your nutrients, and then check your EC routinely.
Can you tell us some measurement and monitoring best practices for growers who are trying to implement this?
Yeah, we definitely suggest that they mix their nutrients and give it some time to get fully circulated and mixed in. You don't want to do it immediately upon adding those nutrients into your reservoir. You want to give it time to get fully circulated, mixed in. Then you want to check your nutrients. So maybe 15, 20 minutes after you've added, check your nutrient concentration and decide what you need to do at that point. Do I need to dilute? Do I need to make it stronger to achieve your optimum delivery or strength that you want to give to the plants? It'll make it easier if you do it at a routine time. If you're feeding every couple of days, every 3 days, daily, multiple times, you want to be consistent in when you take that measurement, because there are other factors exteriorly, such as temperature, that can affect that EC reading as well. So you want to be very consistent on when and where within the reservoir. You don't want to take EC readings within the stream or flow of a circulating pump, because it can give you some off readings just from the fact that the flow is going by the meter itself.
Thank you so much for watching today's Solution Spotlight. If you have any questions about what you've seen today or want to learn more in general, don't hesitate to reach out. We can be reached via email at cea@griffinmail.com, or you can call us 800-888-0054, extension 89199. Thank you.